We've seen a lot of people kind of use tokens as this way of driving incentives for customers to use the product. And I think one of the risks there is that you actually dilute your ability to be like, is the product working on its own? We didn't want to be off to a silo, just a corporate chain that, is in our own world. We want it to be connected. So that's why we built on Ethereum. We're really excited about the progress so far. It's still day one though. We have a lot more work to do.
It's not really day one. It's been around for a long time. Jesse, first things first, base hit 16 billion, I believe it is, TVL in 2025 so far. It's been really successful since its launch. Did you anticipate it going this way?
You can never really be quite sure what's going to happen. And when we launched Base, we were nervous. It was the first time really a scaled player like Coinbase had been, launching an open chain, a global economy. But I think at the same time, we had a lot of confidence that there were builders out there who wanted to be a part of building something that could, change the way the world works. And so, as we've laid out the mission of building a global economy, I think we've seen those builders gravitate. It's led to new apps that people are actually using, solving real problems for consumers and businesses, and that's driving the growth. And so we're really excited about the progress so far. It's still day one though. We have a lot more work to do and I'm excited to get to work.
It's not really day one. It's been around for a long time. Can you tell us a bit about the genesis story and how things have gone from inception to where they are now?
Yeah, so we're about 2.5 years into the journey of Base. It really started for me about 5 years into my career at Coinbase. I've been leading all the consumer products, Coinbase, Coinbase Pro, Coinbase Wallet on the engineering side. And after 5 years of doing that, I took a step back and really had the thought of what would it look like if we took Coinbase, which has, started in 2012, so a crypto company, but also, in many ways built before smart contracts existed, before on-chain was this concept, and reimagined it on-chain. And we went through a bunch of iteration ideas for about a year. And after a bunch of trying, failing, learning, we ultimately realized that in order to bring Coinbase on-chain, we needed a platform where Coinbase could build, where other builders could build, that could, have the scale, the ease of use that would actually meet Coinbase's needs. And so that was the origination of Base. We launched the testnet in February of 2023, mainnet a few months later in August, and then it's been off to the races. And so it's really been from the beginning a focus on how do we make this something really useful for builders so they can build better apps, for consumers, so it's just easy to use this new toolkit that's emerging on chain, and for all of the new classes like creators, like traders, who I think are starting to see the benefits as well.
If you'd had another year worth of time, would you have maybe looked to do something with ZKs instead of Optimism, if I understand, the technicalities correctly?
No, I think when we started Base, we had a few things that were guiding us. One was this idea that we wanted to be a bridge, not an island. I mean, that's about being connected to the rest of the crypto economy. We didn't want to be off to a silo, just a corporate chain that, is in our own world. We wanted to be connected. So that's why we built on Ethereum. It's also why we built on the OP stack with Optimism. And I think the other thing that really drove that was we felt like the best way to build a chain was to use the best in class technology, but build it in such a way where as that best in class evolved and matured, we could have the capability to flex in, through modularity. And so that was what the OP stack offered to us. It started with fault proofs, which are kind of like best in class. In parallel, we've been working to develop ZK VMs, a lot of learnings there. And now as we're looking towards the next chapter of Base, we're going to be able to swap in more proving types. We're going to be able to improve finality. We're going to be able to solve a lot of these hard technology problems, not by totally starting from scratch, but instead by saying, hey, here's how we can do a new proving layer and make an impact. Here's how we can switch up some of the finality settings. Here's how we can bring in other capabilities. And so I think that incremental strategy has really paid off.
You made waves recently with the announcement that Base was considering launching its own token. And that tweet was hilarious, like some of the videos that went around. And one of the comments that really got me is this guy thinks he's Steve Jobs sitting on stage talking about an Apple product. But it really is that. Can you tell us a little bit about why Base would need a token, what that would look like, and realistically, when and how?
When we started Base, we made a really conscious decision from the beginning to not be thinking about a token. And there were two things that drove that. One was that we felt like it could be a distraction from the product. We've seen a lot of people kind of use tokens as this way of driving incentives for customers to use the product. And I think one of the risks there is that you actually dilute your ability to be like, is the product working on its own? And so we really wanted to stay focused on just building a great platform for builders, great consumer experiences. And then the other thing was that, I think that when you start with this monetary financial incentive, you can end up having kind of almost perverse incentives for people participating. Maybe they're there just for the money. They're extrinsically motivated rather than there for the mission, ready to build for the long term. And so that's what held us back. We wanted to just focus on building a great product and building a really strong long-term community. I think now 2.5 years in, as we built out Base, as a global economy, I think we've solved a bunch of those problems, right? We now have a product, it's growing, people love it. We built the muscle for how to build that product. We have this community of tens of thousands of builders all around the world who are culture carriers and believe in this mission of building a global economy. And so as we thought about, okay, how do we continue to achieve our mission, build a global economy, we need to be decentralized. We want all the participants like builders and creators and traders to be aligned in growing it. And we want to continue being at the cutting edge of crypto because that's what we've always been. And so through that lens, it felt like, starting to explore a token with kind of like full eyes wide open, listening to feedback, figuring out what the right strategy could be, like now is the right time. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
Let's talk about some of the criticisms though. There's plenty of people out there in the industry are like, why does an L2 need its own token when, what's the real purpose? How much do you look at the criticism that you guys get and how much do you take on the chin? Because I mean, it can be pretty brutal out there.
Yeah, I think people are always going to have thoughts about what we're building, but I think when you look at the track record for Base, we've consistently been unafraid to believe in what we believe in and then go and execute against it. And if people have opinions about it, they're welcome to share them, but we're just going to keep building. And so I think when it comes to a token, we after announcing the token, brought up a few builders, the founder of Aerodrome, the founder of Zora, head of product at Virtuals. And the reason why we brought them up to have a conversation was when you look at the way they've launched tokens, they've really pioneered what's possible. They've thought about how do we integrate the token deeply into the actual product, into the economy? How do we make it so it is on-chain native? There's these value flows that exist. How do we do new innovative things like pairing models in Zora and in Virtuals? And so that's the inspiration we're looking towards. It's like, how do we make it so that whatever we do, we're pushing the industry forward and we're paving the way for more people. And I think that's what we've done with the chain. When you look at the 2.5 years, how everyone else has kind of followed Coinbase and the work we've done on Base. Yeah. And I think it's what we have the opportunity to do with the token if that's what we decide to do.
On a personal note, you have a very interesting history. You've spoken openly about dropping out of college and paving your own way. Do you have some advice for people in the industry? Because I walk around Token 2049 and you see so many of these small booths. And I was just thinking to myself, how many of these guys were you 10 years ago and now you are where you are today? How much tenacity does it take to go and build something that's truly sort of revolutionary and get it out there?
I think I can reflect back, back to 2012, 2013, we were building Clef, which was, about identity and security for crypto businesses. And, we went to conferences like this and we had a small little booth that I set up by hand and, mailed all the stuff out or brought it on the plane. And it was freaking hard. But, you do that and then sometimes it works, but most of the time it fails. And that's what happened with me. And then you just keep picking yourself back up and you keep pushing and you keep learning and you keep integrating those learnings and keep finding a way to make an impact. That's exactly what I've been doing now for, basically the last 13 years since I dropped out of college. And it's still early, I think, in the journey of the impact that I'm going to be able to make and that Base is going to be able to make. But if I had one piece of advice to people, it's just like, show up. You can't win if you don't show up. And showing up, you're going to learn something. You're going to, build relationships, and it's going to be the thing that gets you to ultimately figure out what the right way is to make that impact you want.
What's your favorite dApp on Base, and what's the killer use case?
I think the thing that we're really excited about right now is how there's starting to be all of these on-chain actions that people are exploring across a bunch of different consumer categories. You're having people creating content on-chain with things like Zora. You're having people do prediction markets on-chains with things like Limitless. You're having people, buy things on-chain with Shopify. You're having people lend and borrow with Morpho, trade with Aerodrome, and all of it's getting easy. Easy where you can open the mini app and do it right there, where it takes 30 seconds to get started and then actually get value out of crypto. And so we're excited to keep supporting all of these builders to be bringing that utility to the global economy and really be building an open stack of platform that enables them to move faster, to reach more people, to build better products, because that's what we think is going to accelerate the global economy.
My final question, the future of Ethereum, it's something we've been exploring a lot about at Cointelegraph for the majority of 2025. I think that there's been a lot of change that's been very positive. There's still a lot of competition from, these next generation L1s. Are you still very convicted on Ethereum and the symbiosis between the L1 and the L2, that entire ecosystem?
Yeah, I think if you look at the last decade, Ethereum has been leading the way in what it means to be a smart contract platform. I think they've done an incredible job building this decentralized kind of layer that Base sits on top of. And we've had an awesome time collaborating with them. We shipped the first version of Blobs with 4844. We've been pushing forward industry standards with wallet standards like smart accounts at 5792. We've obviously been contributing to Pectro, which is launching this year. That's going to grow capacity even even more. And so my thesis on all of this is that like we're at the very beginning of what is going to be one of the most transformative kind of technology shifts that humanity has ever seen. And the way we get there is by working together. And that's the attitude that Base has brought from the beginning. That's why we've said Base is for everyone. That's why we've said Base is a bridge, not an island. And it's been awesome working with Ethereum. And I'm also excited about working with folks like Solana. We just announced the Solana bridge. And so, you know, really all of this is about how do we show up to accomplish the mission, which is building a global economy that increases the innovation, creativity, and freedom.
Jesse, thanks so much for your time. It was great to catch up, and we look forward to seeing how things go with Base.